Yeah, so I hope that you hear my voice clearly, yeah? Because usually I speak not this loud, but I'm gonna try to speak as loud as possible. Okay, so as Buhili mentioned, our title used to be Assessing Extensive Reading, The Hard Matters, and we used to put a question mark in parentheses, yeah? Because this title was started off uh, from our inquiry, from our questions actually. So we were wondering at that time because we thought that the nature of extensive reading is quite challenging. And why is that? Because if we try to reflect on the goals of extensive reading, uh, and we did, you know, a little inquiry about that, we found out these quotations about the goals. So yeah, so according to some of the scholars, the goals of extensive reading are, as you can see here, we can identify that there is a keyword in all the three goals, and that is pleasure. So I think this is the most significant strength of extensive reading because uh, when our students becomes so much enticed into reading and they have the pleasure that uh, is needed to read the books, then uh, it's really powerful in terms of how it will affect the student's life in that case. Because when they love reading, then they can face anything, right? But then on another side, it's also quite a burden for teachers because then they're going to need to make sure that they do not demotivate the students when we have this aspect, yeah, the pleasure aspect. And then we have another thing that we might need to consider the one that is printed in red here without the pressures of testing or marks, yeah. And that's also quite a challenge for teachers because when we cannot test our students, then uh, we we're kind of unsure of how to measure their performance, yeah. And well, even though we cannot test, but we have another option, and that is assessment, right? Because assessment covers not only test, but also another kind of measurement system, yeah. So we might try to focus on these two aspects, yeah, about the pleasure aspect and about the assessment aspect, yeah. And how can we try to get these two in line in the assessment of extensive reading? And I think we've heard quite uh, comprehensive insights and also useful uh, concepts from the keynote speakers and also from the previous panelists that uh, we have various things to consider and also various things to make the classes of extensive reading becomes more engaging in some sense. Yeah, and we might try to review some of those to perhaps include in the assessment. Yeah. Okay, now let's focus on the first aspect, and that is pleasure. Yeah, when we're talking about pleasure, when we are to integrate the pleasure aspect into teaching, then we might consider about how to assess that thing, right? Because then if pleasure is the goal of the teaching, we might need to assess that. We might need to know how it is pleasurable for the students. And then the starting point might be from this. So we used to have three taxonomies or three domains of taxonomy to assess, right? We have cognitive, and then we have psychomotor, and we also have affective. And when we are talking about pleasure, it is highly likely that it belongs to the affective domain. And in that case, then we might focus on this uh, domain, yeah, the affective domain. And yeah, thanks to Bloom and also Masha, yeah, according to this. So they have proposed this affective domain among the other two. Well, actually, the cognitive is a very popular one, yeah. many of us, we know this domain already, but the affective and the psychomotor might not that famous in teaching. Yeah, so uh, in this presentation, we would like to talk more about this, yeah, and how it might be relevant to extensive reading. Okay, so let's go deeper into the affective domain. Most of you might have already known about this, but it's still quite interesting to talk about. Yeah, so in the affective domain, we have this five stages. Yeah, we have receiving, responding, valuing, organizing, and characterizing. So in receiving, the students will have to receive the information from reading if you are teaching reading in this case. So it means that when we are on this stage, the students will face the books themselves. Yeah, so they will read the books. That is when they receive, the information. And then in the second stage, we have responding. So after they receive the information, after they read the books, they will have to respond to their understanding. So uh, for example, they might retell the story that they got from the book, or they might uh, kind of tell their understanding to their peers or to their maybe their teachers. And the next one, we have valuing. So if we pay attention to those two aspects, we might well know that responding and receiving, they are quite similar to the cognitive domain, right? Because we have no other door to get to the knowledge of the books that we are reading other than through the cognition, yeah, through our cognition. And that's why we have receiving and responding. But then the third stage is the different one, yeah, from the cognitive domain, because we are valuing here. So we might include pleasure in this stage, right? When we have valuing, it means that the students will value the it they will value the books that they read. They will value the content of the books, the text, yeah, the text itself. So yeah, when they find pleasure in the text, it means that they value the text. Yeah, and then in the next stage, we have organizing. So uh, after they find values from the text, they will have to organize those values into their own their own concepts conceptualization. Yeah, I mean, they already have their own values, perhaps, right? And when they get new values from the books or from the text that they read, then they might need to reorganize their own values and then add those values into into theirs. And in that case, they're gonna have to do some kind of organizing. And you know the topmost aspect that we have here, the topmost stage, is characterizing. So that is when they put those values into use. So when those values are embraced so much deeper that they can be reflected in their behaviors, that's when our student characterize those values, yeah, into their life. So hopefully, this domain might be considered to be one of the aspect to design assessments, yeah, for extensive reading, in addition to cognitive domain or perhaps psychomotor domain. And then quite similar to the cognitive domain, in the affective domain, we also have action verbs that we might use to formulate our goals in teaching, or perhaps to formulate our objectives of assessment. So, for example, for the receiving, we have hear, listen. So I think the one that is relevant is this, to read, right? To read or to follow or to concentrate and so on. So those action verbs can be used to formulate our goals or objectives. And then for responding, here we have respond or react, clarify. So clarifying would be considered responding, yeah, responding stage, or cite or perform, yeah, or write something about what they read. That's also responding. And then we have valuing. For valuing, we might have argue or challenge or debate and so on and so forth. Yeah. And then organizing, we have uh, organize, develop, prioritize, because then they might need to prioritize which value is useful for them and for their life. Yeah. And then internalizing, it can be demonstrated through verbs like displays or influence, yeah, practice, ingrain, and so on. So that's about the domain that we can use to assess. Now, what about the things that is related to what to assess? When we're talking about what to assess, we might consider another aspect called genres, because then it might influence the type of readings that the students will encounter. Yeah, some students might enjoy reading certain types of genres, like, for example, action books. Some others might enjoy novels, yeah, romantic novels, perhaps. Some others might enjoy poetry. So then the question is, do genres facilitate or do genres affect pleasure? And if that is the question, according to this uh, person, yeah, this writer, Neda B, uh, she said that the role of the teachers is to provide as many as possible, yeah, types of genres to the students so that they have uh, the right selection of books that are related to their taste. Because reading is so much like eating, right? We we might have different preferences, we might have different tastes. So yeah, genres might be related um, to the the needs of the students. Yeah. And it's already mentioned by Bu Anita. Yeah, I've got this book from Bumera. Yeah, credit to Bumera, a very competent, extensive reading teacher. So yeah, I think that this book is very recommended for extensive reading class. Yeah, and yes, we should recommend that book. And then the last one before we move on to Bhumika, yeah, we might need to ask this question before we design assessment or before we teach reading, extensive reading, especially to our students. Yeah. So the question is, how do we empower our students who might have diverse reading experiences and also needs? Because my my reading experience might be different from my students' reading experience. It might also be different from yours. And then my types of reading might be different from your types of reading, for example, or to our students' types of reading. So the question is, how do we empower our students if they have let's say different types of reading experience and perhaps reading needs?